Welcome to the Mindful Mama Movement podcast. I'm Shannon Kinney-Dew, creator of AFreeSpiritLife.com.
And I'm Ashley Walburn, owner of Home Holistic. And together, we are bringing you the Mindful Mama Movement,
the podcast, community, and retreats for women in all stages of motherhood. Mindful mothering is about nurturing your heart and soul while you nurture your children. It's about consciously awakening to your inner wisdom and being peacefully present as a mama, no matter where you are on your journey. From discovering your newborn to loving and accepting the wonderful people who've left your nest.
The Mindful Mama Movement is bringing women together from across the world to celebrate the imperfect journey of motherhood.
Our movement is empowering mamas to be authentic and to live inspired lives. We are so happy you're here. This is the Mindful Mama Movement podcast, episode number 5. In today's show, you are in for a real treat. Ashley and I are introducing you to a good friend of mine. Her name is Michelle Hunter. And Michelle is a content strategist, a writer, and coach with a gift for helping creative entrepreneurs tell their story with simple authenticity and transform their business with powerful messaging and marketing strategy. She is a mama to 3 adult children and continues to parent them mindfully, empowering them to live lives of balance and purpose. She lives in Michigan with her husband and her 2 dogs, who are her fur babies. And her business, Michelle Hunter Creative, is focused on inspiring women to bring their creative vision to life in a business that is rich, fulfilling, and aligned with their lives. You can find out more about Michelle and her business at michellehuntercreative.com. Now, I met Michelle a couple of years ago online. We have yet to meet in person, but I consider her a dear friend. Since we met through this online challenge she was hosting, I reached out to her to help me with some copywriting in my own business. And what I discovered is that she is so generous and so encouraging. And she's just a kind and wonderful soul. She's that kind of person that when we get together, we could talk for hours. And I know you're going to feel the same way in this interview. She shares about the toddler dance. You know, as we become moms and we learn what raising children is, we go through these toddler stages. And she talks about how even her own adult children still go through the toddler dance and what that's teaching her about motherhood in general. She talks about, letting go of perfection and how now that she's a mothering adult children, she can look back on her earlier years and really, how she would do things differently. And she really inspires us all to look at our own lives and see where we can let perfection go. Michelle was a single mom for a lot of years, so she shares the struggle and inspiration with all of that stage of her life. And she talks about animal traits, and we're going to hear more about that. Ashley and I were fascinated to learn what our animal personality traits are, and we'll share more in the discussion on our Facebook group. So if you're not a part of the Mindful Mama Movement group on Facebook, just check out the show notes for the link and make sure to join us there. So let's get started and welcome Michelle Hunter. So hi, Michelle. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so
I've been looking forward to it.
I know. Here we were just talking about interrupting each other, and I went ahead and did it first. So we are so happy to have you here, and just to introduce your warmth and your generosity. I've been friends now with you for, it's been at least almost 2 years now since we've met online. We'll eventually meet in person. But I just was so excited to introduce you to our community. And so tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do and kind of what stage of motherhood you're in.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm an entrepreneur, business owner, content marketing strategist, and a copy coach, which it's a big fancy title that basically means I help people write what they need to write for their business and tell their story. I do that out of my home. I have a home office in a child's bedroom in my basement, finished basement, and my daughter, who works with me full time, has her office in the other bedroom across the hall. So it's all here casual in our home. I'm actually an empty nester. So I have a husband. I have 2 dogs who are my fur babies right now. And then I have a 28-year-old stepdaughter who lives out of state and a 25-year-old son who lives out of town about 3 hours from me. And then my married daughter who is 25 and is my employee. So I'm in that empty nester, second stage, if you will, adult children stage of motherhood. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know what that's like yet, but Ashley has a little bit, she's kind of been introduced to a little bit of that with her oldest son.
Yeah, my oldest is Jake, and he just graduated from college in May, and just moved home 2 weeks ago looking for a job. But we have 3 young boys, and so it's just been a really strange transition to have an adult child back at home.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what that was like, Michelle, for you when you first left the nest?
Left? It was really pretty interesting because ours left all in the same year.
Really?
It was crazy. So we had the eldest, my stepdaughter, was living here, and she was at a time in her life when she wasn't really being a good citizen of our home.
Yeah.
So it was pretty disruptive. And she also was old enough that she really needed to be kicked out of the nest. So we made that decision, and we shared it with her, and we gave her a deadline, and she moved out, which ended up being very good for her. That was also the same summer that my daughter got married. And it was also the same summer that my son told me he wanted to move to the other side of the state and live with his father because, he didn't like rules. So in the span of about 3 months, we had a wedding and everyone moved out.
Gosh.
And it was an interesting transition for me. And I say that to try and put a positive spin on really what ended up feeling like a lot of grieving. Because the house was quiet and I felt like no one needed me. And I felt like, what do I do now? And meanwhile, my husband, who probably felt some of the same things I felt, was also doing the happy dance. He was like, I can get up in the morning and drink my coffee in my underwear.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah, and so we had just we needed to settle into what felt like freedom and redefine how our family just moved, like how things happened, the way the days flowed just suddenly was different. And yet what really surprised me was that after about 3 months, I realized very little had changed. And so, yeah, so if you want me to unpack that a little bit, I can tell you.
Please. Yes.
When they're little, when my 2, my stepdaughter obviously wasn't mine when she was a baby, but my 2 are 15 months apart. So when I had a newborn and a toddler, my day was a whirl of stinky diapers and somebody spit up on my shirt and what are we having for dinner? Oh, frozen pizza again. And sleeping in between and drinking the juice that had the crumbs at the bottom of the sippy cup because I didn't have time to get a coffee. Like that was my life. Very busy. And what I'm finding is that what happens now is that instead of needing me for every physical need, adult children need me for every emotional need. Every decision. I have a headache. Should I take Tylenol or should I take aspirin? Call mom. Would it be wise, Mom, when pork steak is on sale to put it in my freezer? Like, how long can it be in my freezer? Call Mom. I had an argument with my husband. Call Mom. My girlfriend just dumped me. Call Mom.
Yeah.
I need $20. Call Mom. And so what happened is that they moved out, and I thought I had all this space. And what that meant was they had more questions for me, and they needed me more.
Interesting.
Because all of a sudden they were cooking their own dinner and they were doing their own laundry and they were paying their own bills and they were making their own decisions and they needed guidance. But you know how you have a toddler, and maybe this is getting confusing, but this is how my mind thinks. so you'll get used to it as I talk, probably. But you know how you have a toddler and you tell them something like, don't touch that, it's hot. And you watch their little mind work while they're considering if they're going to obey you or not, if they believe you or not, if they need to find out for themselves or not. And more often than not, they go, no. And they touch it anyway. And then they cry. And they look at you like, oh, you never told me it was hot, even though you did, right?
Yeah.
When they're adults, they do exactly the same dance. So they call you, like my daughter, for instance, called me and she said, so I think I need new tires, but I'm wondering when I have to really buy them. And I said, well, why do you think you need new tires? And so she's telling me. And I said, well, you know, it's fall and it's going to snow here. We live in Michigan. It's going to snow here soon. You need new tires before snow. Oh, well, how much are tires? Because I don't know. I'm Michelin, so I know this. So I said to her, I said, oh, you probably need about $200. And she said, what if I wait? I said, I wouldn't advise that. Do you need to borrow $200 so you can pay me back? She said, well, I could put it on a credit card. So I said, are you sure you want to pay interest on tires? Because you can borrow from me and not pay interest. And she's like, I think I'll just wait. Okay, that was the toddler dance. That was, do I really need tires before snow? And then came the day when we had an early snowfall and she spun out on the freeway and her car hit a guardrail and my husband had to go get her and she's standing there, but no one was hurt or anything, which is wonderful. But when you spin out going 60 on bald tires in the snow and you hit a guardrail in traffic and you're just grateful you didn't hit anyone else, suddenly you think to yourself, maybe I should have bought tires, right? But is that how she reacted? No. She said to my husband, Mom told me I could wait.
Oh.
I didn't. She could wait. So in so many ways, motherhood is the same. It really is. It's just instead of being so immediate, well, that's not even true. It's still immediate. Instead of being so tangible, it's more emotional and advice laden. But I still have to stop and let them make their own decisions. And I have to offer guidance, but I have to let them suffer the consequences of the choices they make. And it's really hard to know, for instance, that your adult daughter is driving on snow and on bald tires. Yeah. It's hard to not go rescue.
Yeah. Yeah. I when you're talking, I'm really seeing toddlers at the park and moms, you know, who have their first child, and that when the baby's crawling up the slide, the mom's crawling up the slide. And when the baby, you know, is going up the stairs for the first time, the mom's straddling the baby. And then by the time they have their next baby or their fifth baby, they're reading a book and don't really care if the baby falls off the slide. Right. They're like, he'll figure it out. That it's such mature parenting for me. I mean, it's really why we're doing this. It's really being mindful, like, ooh, she's going to have to figure out this, you know, if she falls off the slide, that's probably not the best way to go up the slide with the tires. It's such a great reference.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and it makes me think too, like how motherhood is such a practice in learning how to trust ourselves and also learning how to trust our children. And, you know, I mean, I'm at this younger stage right now, but even like personally, I had to go through this school struggle for the last several months on what we were going to do with my 5-year-old. And, you know, my instinct is I want to protect him and I want to, you know, find the right thing for him. But ultimately what I was realizing is I was kind of making my fear, I had to really make sure I wasn't making my fear his fear. And then learning that he has all the tools, everything inside of him, whatever he's faced with, I know we can provide him the love and the nourishment and what he needs, but he still has to face those, and I can trust that he can go through that on his own. And so that really just allowed me to step back and just to know that he has what he needs to move forward. I don't have to control and protect him. And then And then it makes me trust myself too in those situations. So yeah, it's just constant practice. I saw yesterday at the pool, two parents with their first, and they both hand in hand walking the child up to the bathroom to make sure he wouldn't fall down the stairs. I just cracked up because I'm like, that I know that's their only, I know it's their first, and just wait. And just as Ashley's saying, and then by the time I put my 5-year-old in kindergarten, people were asking, did you cry? And I'm like, gosh, I hate to say it, but not at all. I bawled with the first, and the second, not so much. Yeah. But, I do constantly think it's a day by day learning to not only trust ourselves and trust our kids, but don't you feel like we kind of get beat up as moms a little bit? And I feel like that's kind of why we need to bond together. So you feel like, there's some tough moments. I haven't even gotten to the teenage stage yet. But, for you, Michelle, like how have you as a mother navigated that kind of feeling sometimes where you do get kind of beat up as mom?
It's interesting that that you say that, and what you just said is so rich. So I thank you for sharing that. I'm kind of a perfectionist. My daughter would laugh when I say kinda, because I'm like a serial perfectionist. And I remember when my daughter was born, she was my first, and I had been so anticipating her birth. But all of a sudden I came home with this little baby, and I had, for the first time in a long time, a feeling that I was totally walking a tightrope without a net. Like I didn't even know what right was. I didn't know where perfect was. And it was really, really disconcerting. So when you talk about getting beaten up as a mom, I've realized that I beat myself up more than anyone ever beats me up, because my standard of perfection is so high that it's not even based in reality.
Yeah.
So I can't achieve it ever. But when my daughter was an infant, I tried to achieve it, and just lost myself in the process. And it was probably a contributing factor, although not the main factor, but a contributing factor in the end of that marriage, because everything had to be perfect, and I was just tense, stressed all the time, and not present at all. I was always thinking 4 moves ahead. Well, if we tie the shoes right now, we won't be late for school. And what do we need to have? And my child is saying, my tummy hurts, and I'm like, don't talk to me. We need to tie your shoes.
Yeah. We're on a timeline, sister. Yeah.
Yeah. Move it along. And then something changed for me. And this was just such a crucial moment. So my marriage ended. At that time, my children were almost 3 and almost 2. And so here I am, a single mom, perfectionist, and very logical thinker. And my marriage ended almost like you'd end a business. So it's so strange. So we went to a restaurant, we got a dinner and a cup of coffee, and we negotiated the end of our marriage because we decided we didn't want any lawyers. We didn't want to pay for that. And so we decided in our logical minds that what made most sense, since the kids weren't in school, is that he'd have them for 2 weeks and I'd have them for 2 weeks, and we'd alternate back and forth like that. Except that we ended up living in towns that were 4 hours apart. So we would do this. And so basically what that meant was that for a year and a half, till that ended, our children lived out of suitcases. So they had a home with me, they had a home with him, they had rules with him, they had rules with me, they had no consistency. And we thought that was fine because we were 20-ish and new parents, and, we're sharing them. Isn't that fair? This is the moment that changed everything. My kids were with me. We were watching some show. I think it was Sesame Street, but I don't remember that clearly. And they were talking about home. And my little 4.5-year-old at that time daughter turned to me and she said, "They have a home." I said, "They do." And she said, "I don't have a home." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Well, I visit you and then I visit Daddy, but I don't know where I live."
Wow.
And that just broke my heart. And it caused me to realize that I had not been present. I had not been thinking at all about how things were experienced from their perspective. I hadn't been trying to look through their eyes. I hadn't been trying to do anything more than love them and meet their physical needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that began a journey to, not perfectly, but to very intentionally try to put myself in their shoes. And that really has changed. That changed everything eventually. I'm talking like it was a switch that flipped, but oh my gosh, no, it was a practice of trying to slow myself down and say, okay, how does this feel to Laura?
What was that process like for you? And what did you see? How did you see that unfold with your children, like in their behavior or in the balance of your life?
Sure. When I started modeling for them what needed to be important. Oh, I didn't say that right. But when I realized that they were looking to me to see how I reacted and to see what I thought was important, and if I thought tying shoes was more important than talking to them, they thought tying shoes was more important than talking to them. And if I thought that a clean house was more important than playtime, then that's what they thought too. And when I started seeing that, then I started, I didn't realize that it was a mindfulness practice at the time. I was just sort of like trying to find something that worked for me, some way I could stay sane as a single mom and do this thing that I had decided to do. And I started closing my eyes and breathing like, okay, if I were Andrew, how would this feel? Okay, what's really important in this moment? And it became a practice. And so the upside of that was that my children and I got very close, and they felt supported, and they felt empowered, and they actually navigated the process of their parents being divorced better than their peers. They didn't have as much of the emotional stuff. But what happened for me is that I had to decide to never speak negatively about their father. I had to decide that my relationship with their father had nothing to do with me and everything to do with them. That was really hard. I had to decide that my perfectionist self was okay that my house looked like a tornado had gone through it all the time.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have time to work full time and be present for my children after work and have a clean house. Like those three things didn't fit together. So what's not important here? I actually went to a yard sale and I bought a big coffee table, like a 1970s era, low, ugly coffee table that was wood. And I told them that was our art table. And we could finger paint on it, and we could put glue on it, and we could cut into it, and we could stick things to it. We could draw on it with marker, and it just didn't matter because that table cost me $3 and it had no value to me. So they would sit on. So if you came to visit me during these years in my apartment, the only coffee table I had was covered with finger paint and a pasta that had gotten glued to the table instead of the paper. And it was very high class.
Yeah. Oh, what a brilliant idea.
But you know what? My kids, that's what they needed. They needed to come home from school and make art while I made dinner and talked to them from the galley kitchen that was near that table. Like that's what they needed. And they needed me to not care if they spilled something. And so when I started making decisions like those, much like anything else, a mindfulness practice, a yoga practice, an exercise routine, it built on itself. So you get comfortable in it. You step into it and it starts to feel like it's okay. It starts to become the habit. And that helped me a lot. even though there were still moments of panic.
Yes. I don't think you can ever avoid those moments, really, right? Michelle, your story and your sharing, I just love your vulnerability and you just have such a warm spirit. I just want you to know how much I'm enjoying this. And I like close my eyes. I can see you. I can see, in fact, you're going to have to send us a couple pictures of that time, because I just can see that table, and of course you're a wordsmith, so you spoke and told me that story so beautifully. And think about like our community now. We have a lot of single moms in our group. Ashley was a single mom for
6 years. First 6 years of my parenting, I was a single mom.
That's awesome. Me too.
Yeah,
Exactly
I actually
6
loved.
years.
Everybody's like, God, Ashley, that must have been so hard. And I love my husband and I love being married. And we have 3 more boys. But I really loved that time of my life. I loved that if the house was a mess, I didn't expect anybody else to clean it but me. I loved that the decisions that were being made were mine. So if they weren't right, I felt like it was so much easier to change. It was like an experiment. Jake and I, and our apartment, and what worked for us and what didn't. And I really remember eating Frosted Flakes one night for dinner.
Oh yeah.
And he thought it was such a blast. And I really just wasn't getting paid for 2 more days. But that was the whole story. But he was like, what? Cereal?
Can I interrupting?
Yeah.
That reminds me of a story that I've told Shannon. But
yes, I was hoping you were going to share this.
It's perfect timing for it too. So, I think as a single mom, I don't think it, I know it. There are a lot of moments that I carry guilt for, that I think to myself, oh, like I wish that hadn't happened. It's so awful. A year or 2 ago, some years ago, my adult daughter and I were taking a road trip together for some reason. And we started talking about her childhood and some of the fun times we had. And she said, you know what one of my best memories is? I love this. I'm going to do this someday with my kids. And I'm like, what? And she said, the time we camped in the living room. And we put up a pop tent, and we had sandwiches, and we had flashlights, and we spent the weekend like that, and we didn't use any electricity or anything, and we didn't have to take a shower, and we just camped, and we played board games. It was the best thing ever. How did you come up with that idea? I didn't have the money to pay the electric bill.
I knew that's where that was going, because I have similar remembrances. Oh, gosh.
And so I was so trying to make it so that they didn't know that I hadn't paid the electric bill, but their dad had missed a child support payment, and was behind anyway. I'm not going to lie. I had been behind, and I had been in a practice of paying it right as it was due. And so it was shut off, and I had gotten some money from my parents, but I couldn't go pay it until Monday. So we had the whole weekend with no hot water, no lights, no anything. Thankfully, it was...
And they thought you were brilliant and creative and we're doing camp at home. Oh, my gosh.
And, I have carried that on for a decade, feeling guilty, feeling like I failed as a mom. And that's one of the times that I recount when I'm feeling beaten down and I'm making the case for how I should be convicted as the world's worst mother, So remember this time, remember that time. That was one that I was using to keep myself stuck and beaten down. And yet my kids think that was the best thing ever. They want to do it with their kids. So I think when I look back on my time as a single mom, if I could talk to me then, I think I did a lot of things right, but I also think I did a lot of things that I could have improved upon. One of them is to remind myself that I'm getting it right. I'm getting it right. Even when I'm doing things that might feel, in retrospect, like society would say they're wrong, I'm getting them right. Because when I'm doing my absolute best and I'm focused on my children and what they need, how can that be wrong? It's not wrong. It's right.
That's right.
And then the second thing is I hated asking for help. I hated it. I wanted to not be that mom that was like, oh, I'm such a victim. Help me, help me, help me. And so what happened was I went the other way And I never asked for help unless it was just dire circumstances. And that really put stress on me. And I didn't need to have that stress because there were so many people that would have taken my kids for an afternoon so I could have some time to take care of myself. There were so many people that would have filled my gas tank when I needed money for groceries. You know, hey, let me get a tank of gas for you so you can go buy some groceries. One time my mom, who, again, I didn't ask for help at all, but she was really observant. So one Christmas, she said she always gave us adult families one big family gift that was rather more expensive, you know, than anything else. And it was always for the whole family. That one Christmas, she came with food, 2 months worth of groceries. And she said, here's your Christmas. And I cried because she had observed that I was struggling financially that much. And I was trying to keep this facade of everything is good. She had observed that that had to be baloney. And she had just very graciously met that need. Well, she would have helped me had I asked her long before that. But I was too caught up in doing everything right and not giving myself permission to ask people to be generous, to be vulnerable. Like, I don't know why I did that. I wish I could go back and undo it. So if you're listening to this and you're a single mom, ask for help. Ask people for what you need. People will come sit while you take a bubble bath and watch your kid. They will.
Yeah, I have a lot of those memories. And then after, when I started having children with my husband, I had 3 children in 2.5 years. And so I had a 10-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a new baby. And I was really unraveling. I was really unraveling. And I was 100 miles away from my family, and I didn't really feel like I could call them either. And I'm not really sure why. But I think it was like, you know, you got yourself into this, Ashley, is what I felt like. Mm-hmm. And now I know my friends and I currently nearly co-raise our children, that we share rides, that there's a lot of calling, you know, like, I'm running late. Can you pick up Blake and get him to his baseball lesson? And of course I'm going to do it. And that's what I feel like would have also happened for me back then also. Of course your neighbors and friends and family will help you. Of course they will. You would do it for them also. And I'm saying the same thing, single moms or just moms that feel like they need a moment, that what that moment will do goes a long way.
I had, toward the end of the time that I was a single mom, I made a close friend. I forget how. I think we maybe had kids in the same class at school or something. I don't remember anymore because she's since moved on and we've lost touch. But she was a single mom as well, and we started co-parenting. And by that I mean, you know the well child checks. When you're working full time and you have to take time off work for a well child check, and it just like kills your employer and you lose the pay and it's just horrible. We got our kids going to the same doctor, and we would take our kids also were the same ages. So her daughter and my daughter were the same age. Her son and my son were within a year of each other. And one of us would take the whole tribe for a well child check.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm. And then the next time the other one would take the whole tribe. We would just, we would go on dates. And so she would be like, okay, I have a date on Friday. And I'll be like, cool. And then I'd set up a date on Saturday and we'd swap. And I would call and say, I'm out of groceries. And she's like, cool, we're having soup. Come on over. And Brilliant. We would do it the other way. Because we both didn't have a strong support network. And I don't know, it just clicked. So I think if you're a struggling single mom, try and look for opportunities like that where you can be of service to another single mom and build a relationship so it's like reciprocal, because it helps just to know you're not in it alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes your whole life feel so much more balanced and way less scary when there's one other person that you know is right there with you.
And even moms that aren't single moms, I think you can get so siloed in the needs of your own little family that you stop taking care of yourself. You stop giving to yourself, and you stop feeding what makes you creative and makes you whole and makes your heart sing. And the whole world becomes what these little people need. And that's, if there's anything that I did wrong as a single mom, it all flows into that funnel. Society says we need to put our kids first, but really we have to put ourselves first, because I can't pour out of an empty jug. I can't pour out of an empty glass. If there's nothing there, there's nothing to give.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's, kind of the stage. I feel like I am on the other side of that. I can definitely, having 8, 5, and 2-year-old, relate to that lost in motherhood stage. And we meet a lot of moms who, you become moms and you get lost in that. And I think, we all go through that. It's kind of like that same story, the toddler dance you're talking about. We kind of have to experience it for ourselves. But we can take the wisdom from these other moms and other support in our life to just remember. I mean, that really helped me to realize that, I can pursue my creative interests. I can run a business. I can do things that are important to me outside of this family alongside raising children. And a big part for me was learning that I am doing no one any good if I'm draining and just irritated and grumpy and bitter throughout the day because I can't get to what is important to me too. And so shifting that belief that my needs are extremely important, that self-care is vital to health and wellness, and then I'm a better mom. I can give, as you're saying, from that overflowing place, rather than that depleted and drained, irritated, grumpy. That is, we all get to. And so for you, Michelle, kind of looking at your life now, I know that you share a little bit. I want you to get to the topic of your business a little bit, and who you just hired on as your employee, and then let's circle around to, or if you can start first on just kind of your own self-care practice. How do you even now balance running a business and still being a mom and taking good care of yourself in all of that?
Sure. Well, let's start with the business and with hiring Laura, because then the self-care will flow into that. So I shared at the top a little bit about my business. So I decided to. I've owned businesses periodically throughout my career. Just had an opportunity where I did that. But I also spent years working for Xerox in a very corporate structure. And about the same time, things happen all at once, I think, for a reason. But about the same time that all my kids left home, I also was downsized out of Xerox. And so I grieved all that all at once. So it was fabulous. I loved it. Very positive. No, not really. But I learned a lot about myself during that time. And my husband was actually ecstatic that I had lost my job from Xerox, because I had been working. I'm a workaholic, just naturally. And I had been working 12-hour days, 6 days a week. And he felt like, and rightly so, it was work first, kids second, me third, him fourth. Mm-hmm. So when I lost my job, he felt like, oh, I'm getting my wife back. In fact, that's what he said to me. Mm-hmm. So they gave me a severance package, and he said, you have this skill as a writer. You've had a dream of doing something with this. You know how to run a business. Why don't you take a year and see what you can do? And he gave me this space to do that. And so now, 5 years later, the business is vibrant, it's viable, and it's been a journey to clarify what I want to do and how I want to do it. Fast forward to now, my mission in business is to empower women to take that business dream that they have or that creative idea that they have and bring it to the world. And to almost like a good old boy network, only a good old girl network, to come alongside them and support them and give them business coaching guidance, and specifically messaging guidance and content marketing guidance. That's like my passion. And so when I can empower women, when I can say, oh, you can do this, and here's how you can do it, and here are the tools you need, and all of a sudden their life starts to change and they can express that creativity, and maybe that single mom has some extra income, or someone is now empowered to stay home with her baby because she can make the money that she needs. That is really rewarding to me. My daughter, about a year ago, said, I wish I could work with you because I love what you do. I love the women you work with. I see your passion. I want to be a part of that. I feel like what I'm doing now in my job doesn't make a difference. I want to make a difference. So we set an intention that by summer of 2017, the business would grow enough that I could add her in as my operations manager. We set that intention, and then God said, oh, how about now? So within a month or so, all of these doors started opening in my business, and I realized I couldn't wait till then for her to come join me. And so I said, hey, what do you think about if we do it in the summer of 2016 instead of 2017? What does that feel like? And she said, okay, that's thrilling and terrifying. So let me think about it. And then shortly after that, she found out that her job at a major insurance carrier was being restructured, and she was going to have to move from first shift to third shift, which wasn't doable for her and her family. And so she said, okay, I guess we're supposed to do this right now. And so we have been. And she started with me actually just a few days ago, 5 days ago. So, yeah. So that's talk about a new adventure in parenting. And you can interrupt me because I'm on my soapbox. So
I love it. I love your soapbox.
So
what's this just first week felt like for you?
Been like the first morning, Monday morning when she came, it was really rocky because I had expectations and she had expectations, and they didn't align. Even though we had talked about it and we've been planning this for a couple of months, they didn't align. And here's why. It's so funny. She expected that I was going to be her mom, and she was going to come in, and just like when she was a kid, not only would I tell her to clean her room, I would tell her how to clean her room. She expected me to micromanage her when she came in Monday. So she was looking for that
lot
structure,
of direction.
Yes. I knew from what I've observed in her in the last 10 years that number one, she hates being micromanaged. And number two, she has so many talents and abilities. I wanted to give her free hand to do within a certain sphere of influence. Like, I have this problem. Here you go, solve it. I wanted to give her free hand to do whatever she wanted because that's when I was going to get the best, most creative input into my business. So here she is waiting for me to tell her exactly what to do. And here I am waiting for her to do something. And we both got really frustrated.
Not very productive.
It wasn't. But we worked that out. And I wanted to share with you, Shannon had asked me in advance of this call to think about this, something I share with my clients. And that Laura and I went back to on Monday to resolve our difference and really think about it. It has to do with personality traits. And this comes out of an assessment. I think it's the DISC assessment. And it's much more analytical than I make it sound. But they give animal caricatures or types to each of the 4 major personality types. And I train my clients this. So I'll try and do it quickly, but if you're a lion is one choice. If you're a lion, you are driven, determined, you can be loud, you can roar a little bit sometimes, you give direction, you're decisive, you can be intimidating, you care deeply about stuff, you move kind of fast. That's a lion. An otter That's the second type. An otter is very playful and fun. And again, fast moving, but gets bored easily, likes to have a lot of variety, is more interested in having fun than getting stuff done, where a lion is really interested in getting stuff done quickly. That's the second type. The third type is a golden retriever. So a golden retriever, if you think about that dog, a golden retriever wants everyone to be happy, wants everyone to feel good. Feelings are really important. And a retriever moves maybe at a little bit of a slower, more relaxed, peaceful pace than either a lion or an otter. And then the fourth trait is a beaver. Beavers are all about details. They're very industrious. They're slower and deliberate because they need to make sure that everything is in order and everything is done just right. They like structure. If you think about the dam that a beaver will build in the river, it's like an engineering miracle because they can put it all together. That's the way a beaver's mind thinks. So we all have one dominant animal and one secondary animal. And the combination of the two, if you think about those in terms of your children or in terms of your colleagues or your spouse, gives you some insight into how they're going to react and what's important to them. So I'm a lion. I'm a lion primarily. So I have to be careful how I talk because I can yell at people. Well, not really raise my voice yell, but the tone, like you'll hear the tone. And I make decisions quickly. I want what I want when I want it. I know, there's one right way and it's usually my way. That's the lion thing. My secondary one is an otter. So I also want to have fun. Like if we're not having fun, we got a problem. So we need to do things my way, but we need to all enjoy it at the same time. I'm laughing at myself, but that's kind of my reaction. So what that means for business is that I make decisions quickly. I change things a lot. Structure isn't really my forte, so I kind of am fast and loose. My daughter is the other two.
Interesting.
So her primary is retriever. She's very intuitive about how people feel. She's always testing to see, are you okay? Is he okay? Are they happy? Are you happy? What can I do to make everybody happy? Am I happy? That's really important to her. Peace and calm is really important to her. Strife, she doesn't function as well. And so she will be the peacemaker to create peace because that's where she's comfortable. Her secondary is beaver. So she needs to know the order. She needs the structure. She needs to know things have to be logical. She manages all the little details. So you can see how in business, she really adds what I lack. But when I'm trying to communicate with her, I have to make sure that I'm calm, that I'm careful about her feelings, that I give her the details that honestly I probably haven't even thought of yet. That I give her
because she needs those details and you really don't.
Right. And what she has to learn is when she comes to me, all I want is the big picture. I don't care about all the details. So I want her to say, okay, this happened and I did this and now it works. Cool. If it's longer than that, I'm thinking about something else now. Like I'm not even present.
Michelle, do you think that we're the same people at work as we are at home? Like if you're typically a lion otter, you're typically a lion otter.
Yes and no. I think that we all have aspects of all four. So if I'm balancing my checkbook, I can be a beaver. If I have a child who's had a major disappointment and is crying on my lap, I can very much be a golden retriever. Yeah. No problem. But I think that we have a natural bent, a natural reaction. So when I'm tired, I'm a lion, 100%. Yelling, growling, roaring. We go back to the thing that's most predominant in us when we're under stress, when we're just reacting spontaneously, because that's our primary, if you will. And I observe this in my own life. So to wrap this around to what you asked me, Shannon, about self-care, I know my self-care is off when I am forcefully intimidating and pushing and wanting my own way and being almost 90% lion. That's when I know that I'm tired, I'm hungry, I don't feel well, I'm not creative, I haven't had time for me because I'm under stress. I think as we mature, we learn how to pull these different facets of our personality out and use them when it's appropriate. But in order to do that work, if you will, to be intentionally peaceful or intentionally kind or intentionally balanced, we have to keep that self-care practice going. Otherwise, we just come out in whatever way we normally come out. So if I were primarily a golden retriever, let's say, which my daughter is, when she's stressed, when she's not taking care of self-care, she cries, she's emotional, she can't make a decision because she might hurt someone's feelings, and she just gets frozen. That's when I know she's tired, or she hasn't been taking care of herself, because she can be decisive like a lion when she needs to be, if she's got balance. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, and I love because you've taught me that a little bit with from a business perspective. I love personality stuff, and I think it's so helpful when you apply it to motherhood and look at your children too. Our children are our mirrors. And so I love the fact that you've already recognized that, some of the things that you have naturally, your daughter has the opposite. And so I love that relationship, how we can learn from our children. And as we start to wrap up today, I mean, I could talk to you for
a lot longer.
You know this. Yeah. We do this, Michelle. We could just talk, and I love it. I don't want to end. But what I think I'd love for our listeners to how can they learn more about that animal trait, to how we can learn more about that and apply it to motherhood. And then just tell us, how we can learn more about you if women who are interested in wanting to start their own business as a mom, or, I know you do a lot of share your story work, and they're interested in writing and they want to learn more about that. Share, where can we find you? And if you have a mindful mama moment for us, where, what would you like moms to take away from this interview as they move forward?
Sure. Okay. First of all, I think being a mindful mama to me means being intentionally peaceful. Just intentionally choosing to be peaceful within myself, within my family. And sometimes it's work, sometimes it's a practice, but that's what being mindful means to me. So how that, I don't know how I want to say this, but so how that translates into what I do as a business is that it's important for me to be empowering and to speak peace into your situation. So mamas out there, you probably have, or many of you may have, a business dream, an idea, a creative thing, something you make, something you'd like to do, an impact you'd like to make on the world. And maybe you're feeling like it's hard, like you don't know how you'll find time for it, you're pushing it aside, you aren't sure where to get started. That's the kind of thing that I help people with, and that's something that I would love to connect further with you. So my website is michellehuntercreative.com. And I'm actually running a free challenge soon, and I want to invite anyone to come join me for that challenge. It's an 8-day challenge. It's called Discover Your Story, and it does get into these animal characteristics and who you are and how you want to show up in the world. How do you want to be present for your family, in your business? The challenge also helps you unpack the beginnings of a business. So how would you sell your thing? What is the thing that you want to do? How would you package that into something you could sell? How would you market it? Who would want it? How would you connect? How would you tell that story? And how can what you're doing align with what you're passionate about and who you are as a person? All of that is a part of what we do in that challenge, and it's completely free. And it's designed to be something you can fit into your busy life, just over those 8 days. So it doesn't take a lot of time. It does take some thought and journaling, but that can be fun. So the way you would register for that, we're starting on October 17th. It goes the 17th through the 24th. Just go to michellehuntercreative.com/challenge. And there's a page there where you can read a little more about it and then register and sign up. And it's completely free. We have a Facebook group, and I would love for you to just explore more about yourself and about your business ideas, business dreams within that challenge.
Well, thank you. We will put the links in the show notes so we can find you easily. And I have taken the Discover Your Story Challenge, so you will not be disappointed. As you can see from this interview, Michelle is just warm and generous and kind, and she's so knowledgeable about helping you tap into that intentional piece she's talking about. And so definitely check out her challenge. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing this time with us.
Thank you.
Michelle,
I've enjoyed
it was so fun. It was wonderful.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. It's been a blast. My lion and my otter were both very happy today.
Well, Ashley and I quietly were pointing to each other. What are you? What are you?
What are your kids?
Yeah, so we'll be exploring that. I think for sure I have got definitely golden retriever in me. And then I think
my primary is probably lion.
I don't want to balance each other out.
I know. Probably.
Yeah, and then probably I definitely have some lion in me too. I can roar, and but we'll have fun exploring that, and we will share that in the Mindful Mama movement community. So join the discussion there as we explore what our animals are.
Yeah, that'll be a really fun discussion, I think, for everyone to think about.
Well, and I think
about my primary and about like how I can become a golden retriever when I need to, maybe easier.
Yes.
Well, I think, didn't you, I think you invited me to be a part of that Facebook group. So
absolutely.
In the next few days or week or so, if anybody wants to tag me and question in that group, or we can have this discussion, I would love to be a part of that. That would be fun.
Yes.
It would be so fun.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Have a fabulous day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, mamas, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we did, feeling inspired and ready to let go in our own mothering journey. As Michelle mentioned, if you join us on Facebook, the Mindful Mama Movement group, we are having a discussion about our animal traits and how we're letting go in our own motherhood journey. Michelle is available for your questions this week. And we are doing giveaways. This whole month of October is the Mindful Mama Movement launch party. And so all you have to do to join our fabulous giveaway prizes is stop by iTunes and leave us a ratings or review. When you do that, you help us reach out to many more mamas, and we want to grow this movement. So that will help us out. Leave a review on iTunes and then email us info@mindfulmamamovement.com. And once we get your email and you let us know you left a ratings or a review, then we will enter you into prizes. We're giving things away every single day, and it's awesome, really cool prizes. So thank you, mamas, from the bottom of our hearts. We appreciate you deeply, and we'll see you next time.